Well, welcome to Twitter Drama Tonight, our inaugural, somewhat talk show format. I kind of expected a desk.
Yeah.
But, where we look at things that have popped up in the RPG community on, Twitter, that were somewhat dramatic or heated, and we're going to talk about them and, probe a little bit deeper into it. That had a lot of innuendo in it that I did not intend. We are blessed in that in this particular topic, which is the critters versus the Monsterhearts, or the heart monsters.
I think
throwing it out there. I'm throwing out two names. You choose it.
All right, fine.
Yeah. And we're very blessed in that we have Monsterhearts #1 fan.
In case you couldn't tell.
And the co-host of Idle Hands Weekly, Chris, is going to be joining us. And we're going to find out about the clash between the critters and Monsterhearters that surrounded the Critical Role people doing a one-shot and a tutorial, I believe.
Not really.
Okay. Wow. Started off heated already.
You wanted drama.
For Monsterhearts. Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm guessing you're going to be the regular host?
We haven't decided. We don't even have a desk.
I know
we can put in a desk, have a new person in this chair. Could be a different chair.
Live 2.0.
You could be doing something on tour going, welcome to Twitter Drama Tonight, and we have a Torg's #1 fan.
Yeah.
But there's just no drama surrounding Torg, fortunately.
We'll discuss the lack of drama.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry with that. Well, all right, just to back it up and get people all on the same page about Monsterhearts
Sure.
and Critical Role, just like to ask you some questions.
Okay.
How did you discover Monsterhearts?
I discovered Monsterhearts, I think through social media. I forget exactly which one. Back when it was being crowdfunded on Indiegogo.
Okay.
And I forget the day. I want to say 2012-ish, somewhere around there. Anyway.
Okay.
And the whole reason I got interested...
2012.
It's... I got the book right here.
No. Wow. I'm not calling into question your...
Yeah. My memory may be full, but it is older than a couple years.
Okay.
So anyway, and the whole reason I was interested is because we had just started playing Apocalypse World, or I'd gotten into Apocalypse World.
Yeah.
And
was that 2012?
Yeah. Apocalypse World is 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, how time flies, yeah.
Yeah.
And I looked at Monsterhearts and I said, I don't think you could do Twilight in the Apocalypse World system, but I am curious enough to pony up some money to see how you would do it.
Okay. I'm writing in a follow-up question here. Why would you want to play Twilight?
Because
I don't recall you ever saying that you liked the movies.
I don't. It was one of those things where the game kind of claimed to do Twilight better.
Than Twilight?
Yeah, than Twilight. Right?
Okay.
I mean, and that wasn't the only thing it referenced. It also referenced Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And
Jennifer's Body?
Yeah, actually Jennifer's Body.
Okay.
Paranormal stuff. And I said, I don't know that much about paranormal romance.
Right.
I don't know how you would adapt it to this system, but I'm curious enough to get the PDF to see what has been done.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the PDF came out, got it, and we played a disastrous, though less so than Apocalypse World, very short campaign over Skype or voice over IP.
Yeah.
Didn't go that great,
right.
But I learned a lot from the failures of that game and the Apocalypse World game before it, and have since really enjoyed the game genre. And
were you pointing at me for that?
Yeah, you were involved in that as well.
Yeah. So sorry, I was involved with all your disasters because I didn't follow up on the not disaster games. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
The not disasters games came much later.
Good to know I was part of the disasters part.
Yeah. Sorry about
that. All right. So what was the appeal? And I guess it was not the disaster games. What was the appeal about that?
You know what? And I guess going back to the Vampire the Requiem game you ran with you were running. It was me and Chris and you drove. And while I was not disinterested in the main sort of mystery of the campaign you were running, the parts I enjoyed most were the personal interactions between my character and sort of the other, I guess, herd kind of they had built up. and sort of the romantic tension and kind of interpersonal drama. And I said, that was the most interesting part of the game for me. And I enjoyed that the most. And then when I finally kind of read and understood Monsterhearts, I said, oh, and that is what this game is about.
Oh,
so the parts I enjoyed most about that Vampire the Requiem game, this is the game that focuses almost exclusively on that part. I therefore enjoy this game.
Okay, great. So, what? Okay, I'm going to throw in a question here.
Sure.
It's not in my notes. And what did you think about Critical Role's prior to hearing about the news with Monsterhearts?
Sure. Neutral at first, then kind of, I guess, slightly negative.
Okay.
Only because of, I guess, blowback I had seen from, I guess, social media.
Okay, yeah.
Like, it kind of got to be one of those things where I started to get a little bit annoyed because it seemed to be the only thing a lot of people were talking about. Then I think I tried to listen to an episode kind of early on, and I could only listen at work. Didn't dislike it, but wasn't really that interested.
Right.
And then I guess when they did their Kickstarter for the animated series, and when they kind of became more of a company than a group of friends,
right?
And I felt there were valid criticisms of, I guess, maybe getting other stuff. Now that you are a company, it's a bit problematic that your entire cast is white.
Okay.
Now that you're a company, which I felt was valid criticism.
Right.
It's less criticism if you are just going to be a group of friends.
Okay.
But my feeling is once you start taking corporate sponsorships and kind of become your own thing, it's more problematic. And I saw lots of people getting kind of dogpiled, or Critical Role fans kind of, I feel, unfairly criticizing that criticism, which, lessened my opinion of the show overall. Even though I know that once something get beyond what the group can control when you get into a fandom, I still do think the fandom reflects whatever I guess IP they are attached to.
Yeah,
so it's not only Critical.
Interesting you say that, because yesterday or the day before yesterday on Twitter, somebody had posted about something about the most popular DMs that are out there are all white.
Yes.
The 5 most popular. Maybe the person said 5. And perhaps they got, I didn't really read all the comments that were there. Perhaps they got dogpiled. And Matt Mercer jumped in and said, the Critical Role DM, saying, no, I agree with it. Yeah. Okay.
So I recognize the fact that I don't have anything against the people who do Critical Role.
Right.
At all. It's more like your fans are kind of reflecting poorly on you.
Okay.
And I guess and I said this on Twitter too, I had very mixed feelings at first about hearing they were going to do a Monsterhearts one-shot.
Right.
Because for a while, especially after that Wendy's game they ran, I was one of the people who said, even though I don't watch the show, Critical Role doesn't have a responsibility or a duty to play other games. They can kind of do whatever they want.
Right.
But it kind of, I feel, looks bad on them that they are not using the position they have attained to then lift other people or other games up.
Right.
I was one of the people saying it would be great if you played other sort of smaller press, non-corporate backed D&D games.
Right, so they did that with
They did that with Monsterhearts. They had done other games before that as well.
Right.
I hadn't watched them because I wasn't really all that interested. So, having said that, I kind of felt compelled to watch it.
Just back up a bit. So the mixed feelings were when you heard that Critical was doing Monsterhearts.
Correct.
Because you had actually called for them to elevate indie games. Yes, and also because if we're really getting into it, Monsterhearts is, and I said this on Twitter, it's sound real cheesy. More than just a game to me, Monsterhearts was one of the catalysts to realizing I was trans. Okay. So I have a lot of feelings for the game that are kind of wrapped up in the game, and the game is very queer. Okay. Intentionally. So. Looking at all my questions. Yep, sure. Sorry. So, knowing that I was personally invested in the game beyond just enjoying the system, it would have hurt a lot
to see this game kind of played as a joke.
Okay. No, absolutely.
Which from all intents and I guess from other things I'm hearing, they ran that Feast of Legends Wendy's thing as a joke, which completely different.
Well, to be honest,
yeah, how could you not? Yeah, how could you not? Yeah. But having heard that,
yeah,
that's why I was apprehensive about the launch. I said, here's a game that kind of means something to me. It would hurt a lot to see it kind of played as a joke or for laughs.
Right.
And so those two things kind of, I guess, gave me very mixed feelings.
Right. Okay.
Saying yes, you should do this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a game I like. What if you kind of mess it up?
Yeah.
But,
okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Mess it up, and we're going to revisit that. Sure. But you mentioning about this game is queer. I saw some tweets where, and not from you, and I don't know where you stand on this. We'll find out right now. Where somebody said, they had concerns or mixed feelings because it was run by a bunch of quote unquote cisheads.
Okay.
So people not in the know, that would be non-trans people, non-gay people.
Okay.
What do you think about that tweet? And do you think it's like a valid tweet?
I cannot answer that question, and I'll say why. Because I didn't see that tweet.
Right.
I saw some Twitter drama where the person, the original poster of that tweet said, "This game is not queer enough for me right now."
Okay,
that's or this game. No, but I think what they said is this game is entirely too straight for me right now.
Okay.
Referring to the Critical Role one shot.
Okay, it might be a different tweet because the person I'm thinking of specifically said about the cishet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I cannot answer that question because I do not know the gender orientation of the people who played the game. The five people involved in playing the game. Mm-hmm. So
let's say, for example, that question is valid in the sense that all the people that are playing, the 5 people that are playing, are all like straight and non-trans in the sense that I mean that.
So that's cishet.
Yes, cishet, but talking to the mundanes
it's
like me.
It's not a slur. It's not a slur.
No, I'm not saying that. Just like there are some terminology used on Twitter that perhaps is not used in the mainstream.
Sure.
And I'm just saying, like, so they all identify with the gender that they were born with. Mm-hmm. They're all attracted to
opposite gender people.
Opposite gender people, like they'd be heterosexual.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So they are in no way, shape, or form part of the LGBT umbrella.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. That's a lot shorter than my scene. Yeah. So
sorry.
So let's assume that. Let's assume that. Is that a valid tweet?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
So remind me, the tweet said...
Word for word, it was something like, I'm paraphrasing.
Sure, yep.
I have mixed feelings about the fact that 6 cis-hats are playing this game. Or introducing this game.
Sure. I'm going to say it's valid. Because the person says they have mixed feelings about it.
Okay.
And without going into what those mixed feelings are, I can't know. Like, from my position... Mm-hmm. The game Monsterhearts is queer because one of the moves, one of the essential moves of the game, is turning someone on. Where your character flirts with them, does something to give the other character involved, to be very clear, pants feels. And the reason it is queer is because the game does not care what gender or sexual orientation 2 or more characters involved are, and the game specifically states you cannot say my character is not turned on by this because I am straight, gay, whatever.
Okay.
You cannot dictate how your character feels.
Okay.
What you do get to dictate is what your character does about those feelings.
Okay.
So that's why the game is queer. And I guess getting back to that tweet, I could see why a person would kind of worry about non-gay, non-transgender people running the game because those people might be more predisposed to create situations in the game that are heteronormative.
Okay, yeah. Well, that leads into this, and when you get the game, when you buy the book, there's 2 books. There's the first edition and the second edition, which is readily available. And they talk about what the game's about. They open right away.
Yep.
Like what the game is about, and we see that also not only in Monsterhearts. We see it at the Free League. I think they do a really good job of like kind of the key points of the game, and I think that helps set you into the mindset or kind of the appropriate mood to play the game. And they start off, and this is actually before the agendas, or
agendas are probably part of the MC, the GM stuff. Probably about like halfway through.
Yeah, and I think maybe in the first page, Avery Alder, the writer or the designer of Monsterhearts, said this game is queer.
Yep.
Right. So, what is it? I mean, I don't want you to put yourself in her mind, but what does that mean to you? This game is queer.
Pretty much what I said, where it's not cis heteronormative.
Okay.
Like,
could you?
Yep.
Since you do a better job of it, can you? What does that mean?
It means that, I guess, basically, the game involves kind of romance and attraction, and it is not just opposite, and kind of shouldn't be just opposite gender people.
Okay. Yeah.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Right. So if you were watching, for example, a romantic comedy, that best friend that's the same gender as you, actually that's how it ends. Keeping the story feral. What does that mean?
Like a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, it essentially means that the person running the game, the MC or GM in other games, should not plan or try to plan what is going to happen.
Right.
So most Powered by the Apocalypse games have 3 agendas. One of which is usually something along the lines of don't pre-plan. And in Monsterhearts' case, the agenda translates to keep the story feral.
Okay.
Sorry, I phrased that very poorly. I found that most of, if not all of the agendas are rewritten to fit the theme of the game.
Okay.
So keep the story feral kind of refers to like werewolves and kind of the monstrous nature of the characters in the game, where something like masks, I forget exactly what it is, but mask agendas are things like think off panel, because Mask is a game inspired by superhero comic books.
Okay.
Did I explain that poorly? Or confuse things by introducing other games?
Yeah, no, I guess if they were familiar with masks, then the few mask fans are like, got it, thank you. And the reason why I was actually confused by the word feral. Okay. You know, although I did play a session or whatever of Monsterhearts, I saw that the Avery tweeted about, I'm going to provide some input on how to make this game feral.
Yes.
In reference to Monsterhearts. So she was very complimentary.
Yep.
But then she said, how to make it more feral. And I'm like, more feral. Because, I mean, when you think about feral, I was like, it's just like Tyra Banks. Fierce? We're talking about, we gotta be fierce.
It's kind of a synonym for wild or kind of unpredictable.
Oh, unpredictable. I see. Yeah, so keep it.
Yeah. So did you watch, not to put you on the spot, not to ask you a question, sorry, but did you watch any of the Critical Role one-shot? No. Okay, that's fine. I watched about like 3/4 of it.
Yeah, and that's why we tagged.
Yeah.
Brought you in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway,
I'm just about the Twitter drama, right?
Spoilers for, I guess, Cinderbrush, which is what they call their Monsterhearts one-shot. There was a part where I think the characters were fighting what I guess turned out to be some cultists. And the cultist eventually escaped, got in the car, and drove away. And one of the characters wanted to do a ritual to try and locate where they had gone.
This would be the witch?
This would be the witch, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, getting into it, why I disagreed with calling the Cinderbrush one-shot a how-to is I don't think Critical Role showcased the mechanics very well. However, that seems to be Critical Role's style. So it was not only because of Monsterhearts, it kind of seemed to be a thing that they just do. Anyway, the whole point is, it didn't seem like Matt prevented it. It just kind of seemed like it didn't work.
Okay.
Where a way to have kept the story feral that Avery pointed out in her tweet was, yes, the ritual goes off to locate these people, and okay, what are we going to do now? Where it kind of seemed like Matt, the MC, had planned for them to not find this car, so he could kind of have other stuff happen, and eventually circle around back to kind of a big showdown between what ended up being a big battle.
Okay, it was coming too early in his story. Okay.
So a way to keep things fair would have been, okay, MC, I don't know what's going to happen. Make the roll. Oh, you succeeded. Yes, this now happens, and having to then improv most of the session.
Right. Okay. Now, this leads into another key agenda.
Sure.
In the book is say what the rules demand. Right.
That's another one that's, I think, across the board for PBTA games.
And
yes,
you may not realize it, but I saw a tweet maybe last week where somebody said, "What does PBTA mean?"
Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of us not in the know.
Yeah.
It means powered by the apocalypse.
Right.
So Apocalypse World by Vincent Baker and Megumi Baker.
Oh, there's two. Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
There's also now a second edition as well. So Apocalypse World came out in about 2010, and it spawned a lot of games kind of based on the framework of Apocalypse World.
Yeah.
And that family of games came to be known as Powered by the Apocalypse, which often gets abbreviated as PBTA. The agendas and say what the rules demand in lots of Powered by the Apocalypse games, possibly all of them, the person running the game does not roll dice. They just kind of react to the die rolls that the players make and the things that the players make.
Right.
So it is easier, I think, to potentially cheat, essentially, if you're running the game, because you're not going to roll a die in front of players.
Right.
So that whole agenda of say what the rules demand is kind of reminding the MC, you have this set of tools, use them faithfully, and don't try to push kind of things the way you want them to go.
Okay, yeah. Which leads into the current drama it's actually a perennial drama of the GM, the Game Master's fudging dice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just play Powered by the Apocalypse and you don't have that problem.
Well, there you go. Yeah, because it tells you not to.
Yeah.
And we all know people listen to what's in the rulebook. Yeah, sure. Okay, now this is my personal opinion.
Sure.
when I saw the drama that came up, and it was I thought, oh wow, what a great opportunity for Monsterhearts. And there was some criticism of it, and I saw the criticism, and people would quickly put, I hope Avery Alder makes a boatload of money.
I was one of those people.
Right. Don't you feel that might be closing the door on this opportunity that Critical Role is opening?
How so?
In that, if people go, if Critical Role is showcasing this game, and then all the people that, and certainly not the designer, I haven't seen this from them at all, they seem to be ungrateful for this experience. And you can imagine the people that are fans of Critical Role would deem this as, hey, they've tapped this game. Like, of all the games they could have chosen, they've tapped this game, and they said, okay, hey, here's your chance in the big leagues. And whatever. Yeah, you can share the feelings in the answer. All the fans of Monsterhearts should basically be applauding this and saying, this is great. This is great for the game. We're going to expand the player pool. Yeah, and then they just see all this, like, not hate, but they see this backlash to that, and they think, who are these people that play Monsterhearts? Like, well, hey, if you're gonna be like that, I'm not gonna buy your game. I'm not gonna, seek out a group.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think we do this in different circles, but I curate my social media feed pretty heavily. I saw at most 2 cases of tweets that could be kind of seen as gatekeeping.
Okay.
So I don't know if I take issue with your statement of all Monsterhearts fans. Kind of.
Oh, did I say all Monsterhearts fans? Okay, then I'll walk that back. I'll say some.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what I'm having trouble answering the question.
Okay.
Because I don't know the extent of the the pushback from Monsterhearts fans or what it looked like.
Okay.
I do know that in that the thread I mentioned about the person saying this game is too straight for me right now, and there is not enough base level queer for me to continue watching this game.
Okay.
There were a lot of people, who I assume will be Critical Role fans, jumping in to say, you're gatekeeping. We were going to check out the game, but now we're not.
Okay.
Blah, blah, blah. And my feeling on that was the person was not incorrect. They very clearly put those conditions of, for me, and too straight for me to continue watching right now. And my feeling for people who jump into a Twitter thread to reply with something only along the lines of, I was going to check out this game, but now I'm not, you were never going to do it.
Okay.
You were never going to check out the game.
Yeah.
All you wanted was attention, which is why you mentioned it. So if you were really, my feeling is, if you're really not going to check out the game, you probably would have just decided that quietly and kept on screen.
Sure. I mean, I do agree that a lot of people do jump in and it's like, I wasn't going to vote for your candidate, or I wasn't going to buy the game or do this. And maybe for attention or to hurt the other person or to make them feel bad. Yeah.
And I guess
go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll follow up on that because prior to watching the Critical Role stream, I kind of made a couple jokes.
Okay.
One of them was along the lines of, I'm probably not going to be able to watch this sober.
Okay. Yeah.
I started watching.
And you're not much of a drinker.
I'm not much of a drinker, no. Like, one beer would have put me out.
Yeah.
I started watching the stream, and like anything, I kind of had to live tweet it as best as I could.
Okay.
Because there were parts I wanted to talk about. And very quickly, within like 2 tweets, I realized I can't be mean. There's no point in being mean because the people playing this game didn't have to do this.
Right.
They're obviously enjoying themselves playing this game.
Yeah.
They have put themselves out there in front of, like 800,000 people on their YouTube thing. Yeah. And I said, actually, I said something along the line. I tried to, I guess, comment with constructive criticism.
Okay.
I tried to say things like, here's how I would have done this, or I think they messed up that rule.
Okay.
And I tried to be very diplomatic and say, I understand they are learning this system and people are going to make mistakes.
Right.
And I even talked about that disastrous game that I had, and I said, I completely bungled this game so badly that you refused to touch a Powered by the Apocalypse game or look at a Powered by the Apocalypse game for several years afterwards.
Yeah. You guys always seem to label that on me.
Anyway,
I remember how I hate Fate, even though I never said that.
Yeah, that's also a disastrous game too. So anyway, I tried to be constructive, and I tried to give advice on how I would have done things had I been in their place.
Okay.
And I tried to say, thank you for doing this. Thank you for making mistakes and training people. And the reason I brought that up is because both privately and in replies, I had more than a few people say, thank you for saying that. As a critical, these were Critical Role fans who said, we appreciate this thread much more than the other Twitter drama that's going on.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this. They didn't say we're going to check out the game because of the thing I was making. Yeah. But they just said, this is a lot better and more constructive than just shouting about stuff.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on for this. Yeah. Just to give you more context, one of the things that actually prompted all this is Matt Mercer he tweeted something like, I can learn to be better. Just things that I would have done differently. It was kind of along those lines. Yeah. And looking at, I actually did read through not through the entire thread, because critters, I don't have time to read like thousands of comments, right? Yeah. People are saying like, it seems kind of really hard for me, or very different from what I'm used to, or like a high learning curve. Sure. And of course, I've heard previously people like recommending, for example, Dungeon World as an alternative or an easier alternative to Dungeons and Dragons. So I was looking like, people are getting the wrong impression, or getting this impression that because of the criticism that they thought, if Matt Mercer, the god of DMs, and if you're a critter, that's what you're going to think. There is the Matt Mercer effect. If he can't execute this properly, like what hope do I have of running this game? Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very valid statement.
Yeah.
And we can quibble about why Matt Mercer is kind of elevated as the god of DM. Not saying that he isn't. That seems to be the impression I get as well.
And he pushes back against the Matt Mercer effect.
Yeah. Oh, he does. Yeah. So I think I can absolutely see that. Like, if people are criticizing how he ran the game and to that Matt Mercer effect, they say, great, what chance do I have of doing this? As you said, I think he really made a bunch of tweets about saying, you can always learn, you can always get better.
He did.
The person he kind of is. I think part of the issue, and as I said, I've only watched or listened to half an episode of Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like Critical Role is more, I don't want to say passive, but it seems like the Dungeon Master, Matt Mercer, narrates a lot more.
Yeah.
And there are very kind of clear areas where the mechanics kick in and the players can kind of pilot their characters.
Yeah.
And on top of that, going from a system like Dungeons and Dragons to Monsterhearts, there are bluff, seduction, charisma checks, things like that. More social skills in Dungeons and Dragons, but they're usually, and you can either agree or disagree on that, they kind of seem a bit more contained.
Okay.
Like it seems like it's much more telegraphed when you would use these skills.
Okay.
That's very different from Monsterhearts or other Powered by the Apocalypse games, where something a player, including the GM, says in the fiction will trigger the mechanics. So I guess for a big, or I guess not necessarily big, but one example, like one of the moves in Monsterhearts is shut someone down.
Yeah.
And it's to undermine sort of social credibility that a character has, kind of to get one over on that person. Right? So if you insult someone publicly, I mean, you're teenagers, you call someone out in the lunchroom, whatever.
Yeah.
That very likely should trigger the shut someone down roll.
Yeah.
That's how these games work. I guess there's another phrase that comes up. To do it, you have to do it, and if you do it, do it. What that means is the player has to narrate the appropriate fictional trigger for the mechanics to kick in. And it also means that if they narrate that, the mechanics kick in kind of whether they intended it to or not.
Yeah.
So it's very possible for the MC to say, what you just said is going to trigger this move. And the player goes, oh, you're right. That's very different from Dungeons & Dragons.
Right.
And I think how Critical Role plays Dungeons & Dragons. So watching their actual play, it was about an hour and 4 minutes, something like that, before a move was triggered and dice hit the table.
Right.
Meanwhile, kind of being experienced with the game, I counted no less than 7 times where I felt a move should have triggered based on banter that was happening between the characters.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. In some games, character dialogue and banter is separate from the mechanics and rules, where in Monsterhearts it is very much not.
Okay.
So I think what happened is the group normally plays D&D, kind of have a style that they play that game in, and it was difficult for everyone to adapt to a different style that you kind of need to run and play Monsterhearts.
And that's fair, because I saw in defense of Critical Role, people saying, oh, Matt normally narrates a little bit more than you would see in a typical D&D game, and then I guess that would be exaggerated with Monsterhearts. Yeah. So you saw it. I mean, you've already given an idea of your opinions.
Sure.
I want you to actually put yourself. Gosh, I thought I was gonna say 6 years, but I guess 2012.
I could be wrong on that.
Well, put yourself to the time period before you knew about Monsterhearts, and let's imagine, you're not a fan of Critical Role, but you happened to watch this because it was a different game.
Sure.
From what you saw, would you be interested in Monsterhearts?
That's a very difficult question to answer.
Of course, yeah.
Even back then, what I looked for in an actual play was not exclusively rules, but I looked to actual plays on how to run a system.
Yeah.
And as I've kind of mentioned before, it seems like Critical Role is we're going to play this game, and not we're going to teach you how to play this game, which is fine.
Right.
So based on that, it would be very difficult for me to answer the question about whether or not I'd be interested
Didn't
in
look
this
fun.
game. Everyone seemed to be having fun. The production values were fantastic.
Yep.
So I guess would I have been interested? Probably, though maybe not as much.
Okay. All right, fair enough. And I think you've already given people a good idea, but if you could summarize your reaction now, like, to seeing Critical Role do Monsterhearts.
Sure. I'm happy they did it.
Yeah.
I'm happy they exposed this game. That sounds very rude. I'm happy they exposed this game to...
like artists love exposure.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. So, paid in that. Yeah. So I'm happy they did it. I understand that learning a new system is hard, and you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
And so, like, kudos to everyone for actually doing that in front of an audience as large as Critical Role.
Right.
Sure, there are things I wish they had done better.
Yeah.
But overall, like, I'm ecstatic they did it. I hope Avery does see a huge boost in sales, and I hope people do pick up this game.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to put you on the spot because I actually just to let you know in this we don't tell the interviewees any of the questions prior, and
which might change in the second episode.
Yeah, exactly. It's all free form. It's all feral.
Yes, it is. He needs pen.
So I really want to emphasize what they did versus what is the actual game.
Sure.
And just to kind of highlight why it's important. And I don't want you to necessarily pull... I mean, you did actually provide an example with the cultists. But don't feel you need to provide a very specific example from what they did. But if you could kind of demonstrate a contrast, like what Mercer did versus how you would do it.
Sure.
As an MC, and I'll be the new player, so I guess I need more prompting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, you actually want to think. Like, do you want to think about mechanics? Because
I think it would be really good about the moves, and that's what I'm thinking about in particular, because like a move is what? It's an action.
A move is, I guess, it's an action.
Mm-hmm. But you're hesitating. Why is that?
I was thinking more like a move is a discrete point where the mechanics kick in.
Okay, but different skins?
Yes. Which are essentially character classes. They have specific moves?
Yes. And actually the one you described prior...
The which?
The move you described
prior.
Oh,
okay. Yes.
That's a generic move.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are... Much like in D&D, there are basic moves that everyone, regardless of skin, which is its like character class, has access to. Mm-hmm. And then there are sort of skin-specific moves that only a person or a player playing that skin has access to.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But they're really important in the game, right?
Okay. I would argue,
yeah. And I just want to highlight why they're important and why perhaps like an MC in Monsterhearts or a game master in
other games,
general RPGs, going like an hour plus without any moves happening. Why that might be a concern, or not showing how Monsterhearts actually plays.
Sure. Can I talk about the game
Absolutely.
that I ran that you were in that you maybe you do not remember?
Or no, it was like I was a ghoul. Okay, yeah. Let's
go with that.
I was a female.
Yes, you were.
Ghoul.
Because I think we just watched Jennifer's Body.
Jennifer's Body, it was based on Jennifer's Body, And I said, Monsterhearts was for my limited experience, was the best execution from what I could see of the Powered by Apocalypse.
Oh, really?
Things. But I only knew
we definitely had
Apocalypse World
and Monsterhearts.
Yeah, so of the two. No, there's also Monster of the Week.
Yes, which is also another fantastic game.
Yeah.
Which is very different. In Monsterhearts, you fuck the monsters. In Monster of the Week, you kill the monsters.
Oh, so sorry.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Like, if Monster Hearts is Buffy and Twilight and Vampire Diaries, Monster of the Week is Supernatural.
Okay.
But anyway.
Sorry, but just to clarify, people are like, wow, Monster Hearts, you fucking monsters.
Yes.
My understanding, unlike Twilight, is actually monsters fucking monsters? Or monsters fucking normal people? Anyway.
It doesn't matter. I guess there is no
Actually, actually, just because you mentioned about, just because you started using the blue language, and now we're like, after hours, we Twitter drama after hours.
Have you seen my Twitter? It's always after hours, and also very thirsty.
It comes up a lot about sex in role playing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I mean, you've explained it. I mean, buyer beware, right? Can somebody who's not interested in sex in role-playing games, could they play Monsterhearts?
Yes, and I hesitated because we were talking about skins, kind of like the character classes, sort of maybe not a core part, but a section of each skin is something called a sex move.
Okay.
And why are you joking that aside? Because we don't do the first part. Sex move is when
I thought I handled it.
You did. That was for the audience. Right? So, sex move, rather than describing the position, a sex move in Monsterhearts is sort of a mechanical effect that kicks in after 2 or more characters have sex.
Okay.
And what it does is it sort of mechanizes the drama you would see in paranormal romance media about, okay, they slept together, now what happens to their relationship?
Or in high school.
Yeah. So, could someone who's not interested or doesn't want to roleplay sex in a role-playing game, which is the same thing, play Monsterhearts? Yes, they would probably just cross out that sex move. And I have seen other people say, when we play it, we've reframed sex to be intimacy move.
Okay.
Which does not require sex. It just requires kissing or any kind of intimate moment quiet intimate moment between 2 characters.
Okay.
It doesn't even have to be necessarily be romantic.
Or quiet.
Or quiet, I guess there has to be some kind of these 2 characters are spending time together or they're opening up to each other. And that will trigger the sex move. Or another Powered by the Apocalypse game, Urban Shadows, which also does paranormal romance, or which is a bit more True Blood, because you kind of deal a bit more with factions and groups.
Okay.
Has an intimacy move, which is the same thing.
Okay.
So you could absolutely play it. You would just maybe have to ignore a bit of your character sheet there, or talk to everyone and reframe it.
Okay.
And in 2nd edition Monsterhearts, the author Avery introduced rules for being asexual.
Okay.
If you want to explore that as a character.
Okay. Right. So
did that answer the question?
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. It was very, very good. Yeah. So could you just demonstrate something?
Wow, put me on the spot here for so you're asking me for me to improv.
Oh, I said that.
Yes,
we had a little break and then.
Okay.
Right.
I thought I had dodged that bullet. Okay.
So, I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily, but I think it would be good for the viewers. I mean, I think Monster Heart fans, if they're tuning in, you're welcome. But yeah, that's great. It's good. You're hearing somebody talking about Monsterhearts again, but it's more of people who are unfamiliar with Monsterhearts, and maybe they've encountered the Twitter drama and turned off a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, let's say sincerely turned off.
Sure.
But let's see, why is that important about these moves? Why is it so significant? And player agency, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think I'll bring up that Apocalypse world game that I tried to run for you and Chris and Mutual.
Yeah.
And as a new MC, I was reluctant to have things happen in the game that forced a reaction from your characters.
Okay.
And that was a big problem because I feel the way Powered by the Apocalypse games and Monsterhearts work is the MC says something that the player characters have to react to. A move triggers. You usually roll the dice and no one's going to know the outcome. That outcome is interesting, and then you incorporate it back into the fiction and the situation changes, and the MC then sort of improvs off that situation to keep things rolling and sort of keep the game fair.
Well, if you want to do redo Apocalypse World, that's fine. I was Focus.
Yeah, because you had the cult.
Yeah, the cult. Which I didn't really understand. I don't play that, yeah.
Neither did I.
I think that was one of the problems of Apocalypse World is we didn't... a very good example of having a session 0 is both the MC and the 2 players didn't understand what they really wanted to do with their characters. We just kind of picked their characters, and I think that's important for any game, but it's especially important in Powered by the Apocalypse. What do you want to do?
Yes.
Yeah,
we all kind of need to get on the same page about, kind of the setting,
Yeah.
what we're going to do, and stuff like that. And we
Yeah.
didn't do that, and that was a huge mistake.
And that's one of the reasons why I thought Monsterhearts was an easier Powered by the Apocalypse game. Maybe
Sure.
better way to put it. And that everybody kind of gets high school.
Mhm.
And everybody kind of gets the monsters. So it's just like, it's kind of easy for people to grasp. Yeah. Okay.
It is more kind of contained.
Yeah, exactly.
There is less of a setting.
I did actually hear that. Gosh, this actually might have been on your Twitter, where somebody said about being contained, where Monsterhearts is very contained, and they didn't like that. Well,
Yep.
But I actually thought that was a selling point. But
Sure, I can see why. It's
Yeah.
Trying to sell this game to other people. People are majority of people who are uninterested because they don't want to be teenagers.
right. Okay.
Which I understand.
All right. Well, let's do Monsterhearts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could just think general high school scenario. It doesn't have to be straight from Matt Mercer's, Critical Role's game.
Cool. Okay.
It's all their games. It's not
Sure.
just
Okay.
Matt's.
Yeah, exactly. So let's imagine your character. I'm going to imagine a nerd.
I know.
Sorry. All right. Would you prefer to be the
Not
football
sure,
jock?
but yeah.
Okay. So
I'm a nerd, yeah.
Sure. Walking on the
But I
hall.
happen to be also.
Take your pick.
I'll go cool.
Okay,
I,
sure.
I kind of understood that one.
Sure. Walking on the hall late for class, one of the big jocks shoulder checks you up against a locker and says, "Watch where you're going, nerd." What do you do?
Oh, I'm kind of torn. Because, but he doesn't know I'm a ghoul. Is there anybody in the hall?
A few other people. Most people have gone to class.
Okay, I want to keep it, but I'm really angry right now.
Sure. What do you do about it?
I just kind of put my backpack and I'm going to walk away.
Anything else for me to how you to move?
Oh, sorry.
But you know what? Actually, that
I didn't want to reveal my true nature.
Sure, that's fine.
No.
I guess that is a move because.
But I'm angry.
Yep, sure.
No.
Are you going to do something about that? I guess what I'll say is, the MC also has moves.
Okay.
They very often, almost exclusively, do not involve rolling dice, but they're things that kind of say what you do in response to the player kind of doing something. And in this case, your response was, okay, I'm just going to shoulder my bag and walk away.
Right.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, you were looking towards me, the MC, to find out what happens next.
Yes.
Which, in Powered by the Apocalypse, signals to the MC, okay, it's my turn to do something.
Okay.
Everyone at the table is looking at me to see what happens next.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Okay.
And I had planned for you to do something different. So,
But that's not about...
it's not about...
We're going feral, right?
Exactly, we're going feral. So you know what? I want to push your buttons. So the jock stops, turns around, and says, "That's what I thought, fucking nerd. Keep walking," and shoves the back in.
Okay. All right. You want to stop that?
Why? What are you going to do about it?
Is there a bathroom nearby?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm gonna go in the bathroom.
Okay. Follow you in.
Good. Is he alone?
Yeah, sure.
All right. It's a guy, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right, sure. Yeah.
Varsity jacket.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go into a stall.
You crying in there?
No, I didn't.
That was the jock.
I didn't lock the door.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Bam. Opens it.
All right. I'm gonna. I have my back to him.
Okay. Time for a swirly.
Yeah. Does he grab me? Okay.
Grabs your collar.
Okay. I'm gonna grab. Turn around and grab his face.
Okay. What is your intent with grabbing his face? Are you holding the place, or are you trying to do damage to it?
Like I'm a ghoul, so I'm stronger than the
Sure.
average person.
Yeah, but my question is,
Excuse me.
again, with the intention of doing what? Are you looking to
Hurt.
Okay.
Physically hurt.
And that's the only thing you're going for.
I don't want to necessarily reveal my nature, but just
Sure.
demonstrate that I'm stronger
Okay.
than he is, or that he thinks I am.
Sure, but in demonstrating that you're stronger, your goal here is to inflict physical harm.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, that will trigger a lash out physically move.
Okay.
Which is the violence move. And that's why I kept asking. The only thing this move is for physically hurting another character.
Okay.
Had you been trying to just like sort of push him around or show him who's boss, that would have potentially triggered something else.
Okay.
Which is why I kept clarifying, is your goal to physically hurt this character?
Okay. Well, just time out there. So that's you as somebody emceeing for less experienced people. Is asking probing questions.
Yes.
Yeah, but when people are more experienced,
I think they still do it.
No, they still do it, but then they would go, I'm going to grab him, but I'm gonna lash out by grabbing him. Like they'll like kind of trigger the move on their own. Is that what the thing? Okay.
One of the difficulties in playing Powered by the Apocalypse games that I'm well aware of is advice given to the MC is often do not speak the name of the moves.
Okay.
Especially for MC. So things like turn their move back on them, separate them, inflict harm. As MC, don't go, well, now I'm going to inflict harm. Just kind of narrate the thing appropriately.
Okay.
It's much harder for players to do that. So you can narrate pretty much anything you want.
Yeah.
It does help the MC when you go, by the way, I'm triggering this.
Okay.
As an aside to say, by the way, okay, like you could narrate, I'm going to grab his face, I'm going to slam him up against the locker, I'm going to like dig my fingers into his eye sockets. By the way, I'm triggering the lash out physically. And that tells me, the MC, okay, what do you want to get out of it?
Well, how is that different from somebody playing? We use the Dungeons and Dragons as the default.
Sure.
Is they let's say they have a feat or whatever, and they give an elaborate description of how they're swinging their sword, but they're also triggering cleave.
Sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's no different.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think better games of D&D also do this.
Yeah.
But at some point, I think the players and GM have to say, wait, mechanically, what are you doing?
Okay. All right.
But why, I think why it's important, or possibly more important, in Monsterhearts and other Powered by the Apocalypse games is because of that players can unintentionally trigger moves.
Okay.
Like, I know you said don't or I don't have to pull out for Critical Role, but there was a part in Critical Role where two characters had experienced a first kiss at summer camp.
Right.
Later on in the session, one of the characters said, do you think about that at all? And the other players said, honestly, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think about kiss at all. That's really cold. Right? Whether the character and player intended to hurt the other character's feelings, if I was emceeing that, I would say, wow, you just said that first kiss you shared meant nothing to you.
Right.
That sounds to me like you are potentially shutting this other character down.
Yeah.
Did you mean to do that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is, whoa, I didn't think of that, but I'm not going to take it back, well then please roll and we'll see what happens. If the player says, you know what, you're right, I didn't mean to say that, can we walk that back?
Okay.
Yes, absolutely you can.
Yeah.
Let's rewind, that didn't happen.
But shutting them down is actually the name of the move, right?
Shutting them down is the name of the move. It's where you kind of, you pull out some social cred out from under this person, make them feel small, kind of, turn them off.
Okay.
So I guess that's where the difference between, I would see as other kind of D&D style games and Powered by the Apocalypse games is, I think it's much harder to unintentionally trigger mechanical effects in Dungeons and Dragons style games, where it's a lot easier in games that sort of try to, I guess, have fictional triggers.
Right.
And that was my complaint with the Critical Role actual play.
Right.
And that's where I can say I saw like 7 or 8 times where, based on what the player said, it seemed like you were either turning someone on, shutting someone down, or triggering any of these other number of moves, whereas the table just kind of seemed to treat it like banter.
Right. Okay. Now, you've also said, not connected to the Critical Role thing, but you like games where failure has consequences.
Yes.
And Monsterhearts provides that, or Powered by the Apocalypse provides that.
Number of games,
Yeah. Can you, for example?
Sure. So I've said before that in Monsterhearts and other Powered by the Apocalypse games, the person running the game does not roll dice.
Right.
Oftentimes there are about like 3 times, broadly speaking, that the MC is told to do something. One of them we kind of looked at in that little mock thing where you were looking to me to see what happens next.
Yeah.
That is one time when the rules say, now it's your turn to speak.
Yeah.
The other time is when when you wouldn't roll dice, where you have the MC has established something will happen unless you have your character take action, and the player has their character ignore it.
Right.
Then it specifically says, great, MC, do that thing you hinted at.
Yeah.
So for example, like if that jock was coming at your character with a fist, and you can just kind of say, okay, well, I just kind of duck my head, and then, well, you're going to get punched.
Yeah.
Because you did nothing to avoid this fist that was incoming.
Okay.
And I very clearly stated what was going on.
Yeah.
The last time that the MC is told to make a move is when the player makes a die roll, and the total of the dice, which is 2d6 plus a small number, is 6 or less.
Okay.
And one of my pet peeves is calling that a failure.
Okay.
When many games do not call it a failure, they call it a miss.
Right.
I guess the 3 range bands are 6 or less is a miss. A 7 to 9 is generally a weak hit. Okay. Which gives you sort of a mixed success. Okay. And a 10 or higher is a strong hit. Okay. Which generally gives the player everything they want. Right. Oftentimes, individual moves will say what happens on a 10 plus or a 7 to 9. Right. Some moves will also say mechanically what happens on a 6 or less. Many do not, because a 6 or less means MC, pick something from your list of moves to do, because now it's your time to make something happen. Okay. All right. Good. I got that. Yeah. It reminded me of a cyberpunk game I saw, Powered by the Apocalypse. Yeah. Sprawl. No, you actually you can see it on. No, Idle Hands. Our own website. We have a cyberpunk. The one that Chris made. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Right. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Chris, and congratulations are in order, I believe, because Trophy has hit its stretch goal, which means you'll be contributing to the Trophy Kickstarter. Yeah, the Trophy. And if you're watching this live, then you can still contribute, and depending on when it goes up, it might be over. Well, it's live. Oh, it is right. It's from people watching live. I missed that. People not watching live, it's over. It's over. But we can still congratulate Chris. Yeah. No. All right. Sure. But and thank you for joining us for Idle Hands Twitter drama tonight. Did I ask the questions that you wanted to hear Chris answer? And we're going to be making this like kind of a, not necessarily me as a host, but we're going to be making this the kind of a chat format in the future. Instead of table? No, sorry, I mean chat in that you can chime in with your own questions to ask our guests. All right? If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I got that down. Yeah. Bye. Later, mortals.